Welcome to The Passion Pod with your host, Chris Johnson. Thanks for joining us. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy the feature presentation.
Welcome back, friends. Today we're sitting in Los Angeles with a guest who makes way better food than me. I feel like I'm actually pretty good at cooking, but I don't write down any recipes. Versus when we were down in the lobby, he was just telling me that food.com wants him to write one. So clearly he's the master. He was on MasterChef, good friend of Santino the Misfits, who is also a guest. Welcome to the show, Derrick Fox.
What's up, brother?
Dude, thanks for coming.
Yeah, this was easy. You're right down the road. Coincidentally, you were like, I'm coming into LA to do a podcast. You want to be a guest? And I'm like, man, I don't got a lot of time. Where do you think? I was like, where? And you were like, in the marina. I was like, done. I can walk there.
Dude, see, I had the opposite thing with several of the people I hit up because LA is so spread out, which I'm not used to because where I live, it's like 10 minutes regardless of where you go, you know? And some people are like, man, I don't think I can do that. That's going to turn into a 4-hour part of my day.
It does,
and
man.
I'm like,
it's
okay.
LA's, that's like one of the hardest parts about out here. It's so spread out, you know?
Yeah.
I got friends that moved to the valley and I'm like, see you never, you know? Because it's like, that's a whole nother country.
Yeah. And we could go on that conversation for days.
Yeah.
I mean, you travel to other big country or, you know, other countries and big cities and it's like, wait a second. So they have subways and stuff that are all just good.
Yeah.
And we just choose not to in LA for quite a few reasons, but we're not going to go down that rabbit hole. Anyway, so in your own words, who are you and what are you passionate about?
Man, I'm passionate about a lot of stuff, but it's mostly anything that's involving creativity and art. I discovered, you know, during high school that I was really into music and making music, so I started playing drums and got really passionate about that. And, you know, Travis Barker obviously being an idol, but also like learning about like Carter Buford and just all the amazing drummers that have ever played. And that got me just like really involved in something, and then that passion really turned into something. It was like, okay, when you pursue things with passion, you can just go so many places. You can go so far. And then I started like cooking while in bands and stuff. Like, you know, in LA it's hard to make it, so, you know, I'd work at restaurants, you know, just in between gigs and stuff, and I fell in love with like the art of food, and I would just watch chefs work, and I was just like really inspired by that, and I would go home and try to recreate it, which is kind of funny. Is like Facebook memories like pops up every day. You can go look at like an old memory, and like I'm looking at shit like 12 years ago. I was like trying to plate food, and I was like, what was I doing? Like I stuck avocados and mashed potatoes the other day just to like in the, you know, the memory, the pose. I'm like, what was I thinking? Like, that's a no-no. But, you know, I was just playing with food because, you know, you got to make mistakes before you figure it out. So
sure. I mean, it's all part of the process. So when you got into drumming, did you like initially start in school band type stuff and you discovered like percussion, this is fun? Or did you, you know, watch, you know, rock stars on TV and you begged your mom to buy you a drum set that pissed off your neighbors?
Man, so this is actually a good question because it's kind of a little bit of all that. When I was really, really little, like 6 months old, I think a lot of kids did this, but my aunt has a photo of me playing drums on pots and pans with wooden spoons. And it's like, it was like, this is just destiny, like cooking and playing drums. And here I am, you know, so that's kind of wild when she pulled that up. But then when I was in elementary school, I went to go try out for the band, and I was like, I want to play drums. And the band instructor put me on bells, and I was like, fuck this, I'm out. And looking back, he was doing me a solid. I would have learned notes and chord progressions and all that while doing percussion, and could have graduated later to drums. And, you know, but when you're young, you have no idea, and they're not explaining it to you. They're not like, this is a really good idea, and this is why. They were
just
like,
want to hit shit.
Yeah, and they're like, you're just on bells. And I'm like, no, I'm not. Peace. And then in high school, when I was playing baseball, I was having a lot of, you know, teen angst and wasn't getting along with my baseball coach. And I had this aggression, and I was like, I got to get it out. And I was asking my parents for a drum set, and, you know, the money was tight, and they were like, no, because, you know, drums are stupid expensive. So one day I skipped school, and, you know, my parents were at work, and I heard this like interview about Dave Grohl, how they used to record in their garage, and they'd crack the garage for reverb, like just to get a little bit of reverb. And so I went into the garage and I cracked the garage about a foot, and I just flipped over a bunch of trash cans. And my dad always had like a lot of tools, so I made like some mallets. I just went stomp in the garage for hours, to where the like neighbors were calling the police. And my parents come home at 3 o'clock, and I'm still going. Like, I lost track of time. And they hit the garage button. It goes up, and I'm like, uh-oh. Like, I'm not supposed to be home right now. And I'm just, like, dripping in sweat, just slamming on these trash cans. And they were like, what are you doing? And I was like, I need a drum set. And they were like, okay, help paint the house. We'll get you a drum set. So then they got me a drum set. And, man, I tell you, the first 6 months was just terrible. You know, like, my parents would be like, you cannot play when we are home. We do not want to listen to this. And I'm like, okay. And then so I would get home from school at like 2:45, and I would run from the bus stop to the house so I could get on my drum kit and start and play and practice.
They put it in the basement, so that at least
we didn't have we were in Florida, so we didn't have a basement. So it was in the living room. And so I would just play from the time I got home from school to the time my parents got home from work, and then they would walk in the door, and just my dad would just give me the cut it sign. And then one day, like, he walked in, and I stopped, and he goes, no, that was good. Keep going. And I was like, what? I was like, that was a turning point. I was like, all right, let's find a band.
Yeah.
So, you know, we joined bands in high school, and I ended up joining this band later days, and we ended up, man, we were killing it. We were, back in the MySpace days, we were top unsigned band on MySpace, and we booked our own tours through MySpace, and we stayed independent. We turned down record deals. Like, we were selling out shows all over. And
what made you want to turn down record deals? Because doing all the work of like being your own manager and then selling all the merch and having to have all the merch printed and doing like, that's a lot of work. Granted, then you're not paying out a manager, but still.
Yeah. So when we were like, again, like when we're passionate about it. So we studied it, you know, we studied the business, we studied what works, we were studying why bands merchandise works. Like, we were really like, and when we were out on the road, we're sober, that we're focusing on this, we're not messing this up. And we, like, the guys in my band, they were all smart, like 4.0 GPAs plus honors students. Like, we studied this, and we're like, the 360 deal started like around when we were being offered things, and we saw like just bands that were falling apart because they'd signed this record deal and they could never pay it back, and then they'd get shelved, and then they couldn't be a band anymore. We were like, we don't want to do that. And we figured out how to tour with a PA and charge the venue for our PA, so we were making double money. We were like, we want a cut of the door, and then we're like, you know, it's $1,000 for our PA, but then all the bands can play. So we would headline, they'd pay us $1,000 for bringing the PA. All these other bands would open up for us and bring all their fans and friends. And we just made this little ecosystem. And 2006, summer 2006, 4 kids and a merch guy, we made $80,000 in one summer. It was just like, we didn't need a record deal. We were like, we got this.
Sure.
We got out to LA we took that money and moved to LA and hired Steve Evans to record our album.
So you didn't even have an album out when you did the $80,000 in sales?
We did. No, we did. We had like an EP.
How'd you record that?
Yes,
2005, 2006 is it's not the time frame of like SoundCloud and like
it wasn't.
We would garage banding that easy.
Yeah, no, it was old school. We'd have to go and book studio time, and man, we went all over. I mean, because we were living in Fort Myers, so there wasn't a lot. Excuse me. So we booked some studio time up in Gainesville and recorded an album, and we did it all just by hustling, selling merch. I mean, we just created a business. We just said, we're not touching that money. We'll, if you need money for other things, work other jobs, but the money that the band makes goes into the band pot. And then we would grow it. We would, we'd do a show, we'd sell it out because we hustled. I mean, we would spend every week leading up to our shows flyering our shows,
Sure.
And I miss those days. I miss the organic flyer because that separated the hustler from the lazy person.
Yeah.
Like now, like if you have any kind of drive, you can hustle online and it doesn't physically take it out of you. But that whole you got to go to Kinko's and press 1,000 flyers, and then they, and then you got to divide them up, and you got to, coax your friends into going out and passing out flyers. Like, I miss those days, but
Yeah, now it's like social media stuff. Really.
Yeah.
What was streams and stuff? Something that like because at the time this was before you just immediately popped on Spotify.
Right. MySpace would track your streams. So like you could.
Oh, okay.
So I remember when we hit 1 million plays on MySpace for one of our songs, and we were stoked. And like MySpace would rank you. They had the unsigned, independent, and major label acts. And I remember one time we were top unsigned on MySpace, and then next to us was like Newfound Glory, and then next to that was Beyonce, and we were just like, we're fucking making it, you know.
That's when you screenshot it.
Yeah, and I don't even think we didn't. We were just like, let's go, you know.
Yeah.
But we would. I mean, I worked at a music store, and hopefully Brent doesn't hear this, but I would sit back in the computer and I would spend my entire day, every second that there wasn't somebody in the drum department, I was on there messaging people, hey, check out our band, hey, check out our band. And I mean, I would go
like
into
venues type of people, or what kind of people?
like just people.
Oh, okay.
Because you could just randomly message people on MySpace. You could just search by a city.
Okay.
So every city that we were going to be going to, we were messaging everybody until, you know, I think you could max out at like 10,000 messages or something like that. It was crazy, and we would do it, the four of us, and then we started. That's the other thing. The dudes in my band were smart. We had a concert one time that we had to get voted to win, and we were already winning from our fan base, but then this other band, we could tell they were cheating. So my guitar player's like, "Yo, I'll just build a bot that will vote for us 1 million times." And he did. He went into the computer, he built a bot, we set it on like 20 computers, we went to the school library, set it on the library, and it just ran and voted for us. I mean, it was just like,
this was in high school he did that?
Yeah.
Whoa.
Dude's smart. Yeah, he's good with computers. And so it's just always been like that. We would just hustle. It was relentless hustle. And I just liked the whole idea of the business. And so now that's what I've put into this cookie company is I'm like, I'm going to approach this cookie like a band. And I did that. I'm going to take one investment of how much it takes to get off, and then everything's going to go back into it. And so every time I am in the black, I take that money and I invest it back into the cookie and say, okay, what do we need? We need a better merch table. We need a better merch setup, because the better merch setup sells more cookies, you know?
Yeah.
So, and then it's like booking events and stuff, and it's working. I mean, the cookie's growing, and I got a little map at home where it's like every new city it goes to, I put a little pin in, and it's just like, it's fun. And then it's like, then we have the social media aspect of it, and that part I kind of, you know, it's like when you were in a band in high school, it was like there was four of you. If you were smart, you found one guy in your band that could make videos. You'd have one guy in your band that could write songs. You'd have one guy that would hustle like me, just get it out to everybody. And then you got another guy that would just like flirt with the girls to get them there and help unload the trailer. You know,
everyone had their role.
Everyone had their role.
Yeah.
Now it's like you're a one-man band and you have to do everything. I gotta make videos. I gotta edit videos. I design this whole box. I design the website. It's like there's so much I gotta do, and I'm like, this is this is bullshit.
Yeah, but I mean, you don't think about like the stepping stones, you know, and what you've learned from each of those things that put you in a position to be able to be successful for these other things.
Right.
Until you're in that position and you're like, man, if I hadn't already done all these things, this just wouldn't be possible in this moment.
Exactly. I look back every day on being in that band Later Days and everything that it showed me about just the work ethic, the creativity, and applying it. And I've done it with my chef career, and I'm doing it with this cookie company, and it's kind of effortless because I know the route. You know what I mean? And not a lot of people do. And a lot of people look at me and they're like, "Oh, it's going so easily," like, you know.
Yeah.
But it's because I put in, 15 years before there was social media.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, and I think other people are affected by like the no way more so, you know, when they're new in any kind of entrepreneurship or whatever, they get their first no and then they're really thrown off and it takes them a long time and it looks like it's really hard.
Yeah.
But it's like, dude, when you're in something like a band or in general entrepreneurship, you're selling a product, like most people are going to say no. They just are, you know, but you're not trying to find 99% of the population to buy this product or to like this music or whatever. You're trying to identify the group of people that do. And once you get used to hearing no, and you realize like this is just kind of like part of it, and that's totally fine. I'm just going to keep working towards these things. I don't think it like bothers you as much. You can kind of just keep pushing, and people don't even see the no's.
Well, and also the no's are a good moment for reflection. It's like when you learn that no is okay, but also to study that no. Why did I get a no? What did I do wrong? Was I too aggressive? Did I not give enough information, or whatever it is, whatever the job, whatever the hustle is? It's like there's a reason for that no, and it's a good reason to learn from. I had, a moment with my band, and it's made me just a better person. And this was 20 years ago, but I think about it every day, or 15 years ago. But we were getting ready to go out to LA and record with Steve Evans, and like we were about to spend all this money, and they were just like, my band came to me like, Derrick, you got to get better at drums, or we have to find somebody else. And I was like, what? And I was like, that hurt for a minute. And I was like, okay, give me 6 weeks.
Yeah.
And then I did. I quit everything. I didn't go to work. I didn't go anywhere. I sat the minute my parents left, like for the day. I mean, I was 17, 18. My parents would leave, and I would spend all day just Paramore records, Blink-182, Newfound Glory, Taking Back Sunday. It was just like I learned them all from front to back, and like why they worked. I was like, why is this fill here? Why is this crash here? All that. And I'm like, okay, now I get it. And then they came back and were like, let's write this album. And then I was so on that they were like, shit, we need to get better. But I kind of did that with the cookie too. With this cookie, when I started creating it, I was like, I'm just going to do this super guerrilla style. I'm going to white box, sticker, put a cookie inside, mail it out. And I had a just solid cookie recipe. It wasn't anything groundbreaking. And then I got into like making the logo and talking with a branding team, and then I ended up hiring the branding team and spending a lot more money than I thought I was going to. But then they helped me bring my vision to life, and I landed here, and I was like, shit, now I need a better cookie.
Yeah.
And so then I had to go back to the drawing board and make an amazing cookie, and I spent like 3 months just doing different combinations of butter, sugar, flour, eggs, the whole thing, and then now I got like a really dope cookie that lives up to the quality of the box, and just like, feel good about it.
Well, that's good, because we're all going to have some. Man, without reminiscing too long, I sometimes think about it. I'm like, God, I wish social media went back to that time frame where people didn't have to know exactly what you were doing all the time. You didn't have to constantly be like, man, every time I post a selfie, I need to reach X number of likes. Otherwise, it's like, it's exhausting. But I mean, that's all part of like building a brand these days. So when you were talking before about how you had to get better at drumming, that really is a big part of it, though, is that you have to have a like quality product. The product in that case could be the music itself or whatever. This could be the cookie that we're talking about, but the product has to be a really good quality. But arguably just as important is the marketing and branding and how you put out this product, so that way people even see it or try it in the first place. Because you can have something really great, but if you don't know how to market it, no one's even going to try it.
Right. And now everyone's marketing and branding everything, so everything's so saturated. It's hard now. I always think like, if the Beatles started today, could they do what they did? And I think the answer is no, and that's going to piss a lot of people off. But like, if there weren't a lot of people doing it then, and they were just so new and catchy. But it's like now, like I've heard some amazing music, and I'm like, this is never gonna make it, you know. And I've even played with some artists that are like some of the best singers I've ever heard, and they just hang up the towel because they're like, there's too much.
What do you think are the most useful tools these days as far as getting out there with branding and whatnot? Because that applies to everything. It applies to a business, but it applies to a band or anything else. What are the tools that you should use right now?
I think more than anything, just stay genuine. Don't try to go, oh, this person's doing that, so I need to do this. Just look, go inward and go, I just want to make this because this is what I want to make, and I want to do it for that reason. And when you just really hone that, a lot of times it grows on its own. I mean, you look at I hate to like even make this as an example, but like you look at Joe Rogan, like he was not trying to be the biggest podcast in the world. He just he was just curious, and loved talking with all these people, and it blew up. It organically grew, you know. So if you focus on your product and just make it genuine, it can organically grow, and then, you know, then there is no recipe, you know.
Yeah. Well, and I think you have to do something that you actually like continually enjoy doing, you know, and you can lose the enjoyment when you're trying to chase something else.
Yeah, but also do something that you're good at. It's like, yeah, I'm good at, do something that you're great at. I'm good at playing drums, but like I've been surrounded by just so many musicians that can outplay me, but I can out-chef a lot of people. So I'm like, I'm going to go further chefing than I am playing drums. And I can always play drums and have fun and, you know, jump on a track here and there and make a little bit of extra money, but I'm not going to be Travis Barker, right? Sure. Like I know that because I'm not putting in that time into that. And also there's a gift there. Some people have a special thing, and I get told that a lot, and it's not, you know, me knowing it, but I get told a lot, like, this food is different, you know, it's amazing and for different reasons. And so I'm just following that gift and just focusing in on it, and wherever it goes, and I'm just enjoying the ride.
I think sometimes people get really stuck on what they think they're supposed to be,
right?
Because that's what they were at one point in time, or what they proclaim to the world they're gonna be, and they don't want to accept that defeat. And it doesn't have to be looked at as defeat. Your life is okay that it goes in different directions periodically. Most people don't do what they imagined they were gonna do as a kid their entire life.
Sure. And now more than ever is like, you're not gonna just do one thing to survive, and
as a creative, that's like not possible.
But even any job, like you gotta unless you're like a surgeon, you know, some kind of doctor, or if you're a CEO of a Fortune 500 company. Other than that, you got multiple hustles, you know.
Well, the secret is to move to Eau Claire, Wisconsin, where I live, and then the cost of living is so low, you can own a skateboard shop and then come to LA just to like talk to people.
That sounds awesome. There's a few places that I've wanted, like Boise, Idaho. I want to go open a restaurant there, but like the wife's not cool with it.
Dude, one day we'll see what happens. So talk to me about that transition, though, about like at what point did it kind of click, and did you realize maybe I should try to pursue food instead? Because before that, I'm sure the hustle was like drumming, music, this is what I really want to do. But when did the focus shift?
That's a good question too, because it was a very prevalent moment, and it was tough. But like I said, I've always cooked, but like I was hustling as a drummer, and like, you know, I was playing some amazing gigs, and I landed a gig with this female pop group, and they had me on salary as a drummer, which was dope. It wasn't a lot of money, but it was paying my rent and my car.
Yeah, it was consistent. You knew it was coming. So.
Playing drums. Paying my rent and paying my car with drums in LA. Like, it's an impossible feat, and I was doing that. I didn't have any extra money, but the band was kind of falling apart. They weren't getting along, and I've just had so many friends wearing me down about, you should open a restaurant, you should go on a cooking show. It's like, first of all, opening a restaurant is one of the hardest things ever, and I have no experience in the restaurant business at this time, so I'm like, or cooking, you know, owning a restaurant. I've worked in many restaurants, and I just know, I'm like, that's not a possible outlet right now. And then also enough people were like, you should go on a cooking show. You should go on a cooking show. And then one day, like, just the band was just not getting along, and I was like, all right, I'm gonna try something. And I was like, I've seen every episode of MasterChef. I'm going to go see if they're casting. And I found the casting email, and I sent them a photo of a dish, a photo of me playing drums, and a bio. And then I hit send, walked into the kitchen, made some coffee, went out to the patio. 20 minutes later, the phone rang, and it was like, holy shit.
Whoa.
And so I go on to MasterChef, long story short, get through the whole casting process, make it onto the show. And I'm like cocky and naive. I'm like, I fucking got this, right? I'm like,
yeah.
And which I think there's times to be humble, but there is times to be, I'm fucking, like, I got this, because you need that motivation, and that also scares the competition away, you know? And when you're like that, sometimes you need that. I'm not saying that's the best case all the time, but it really helped me get through MasterChef season 6. And
here's part of it, not to totally cut you off, but it's just, if you don't believe in yourself, how is anyone else gonna believe in you?
Right. And I've always hated, like, you know, you're cocky. It's like, no, I'm confident.
Right.
I know, I've studied everybody else. I know what I can do, and it's better. So I believe in it, right? But you have to figure out how to do that humbly, and then that's when everyone loves you.
Yeah.
But
anyway,
on
TV, it's a whole personality too that it kind of has to be over the top.
Yeah, and you also have no control of how they edit the show. So
sure.
they made me look really awesome, and I'm grateful for that. So but then I didn't win, and that really hurt, because I've always wanted everything I did. You know, like that was like my first big like loss. It was like.
And you kind of went into it with that expectation coming up to the end that like you thought you were going to win?
I could see it. It was right there. And like every Battle of the Bands we ever played, we won. It didn't matter what state. I mean, we won a Battle of the Bands in Fort Myers, Florida, and then we did LA's Battle of the Bands at Universal City Walk, and we won that. And we were going up against all the best bands in LA, and we won best unsigned band in LA. And I was just like, and all the baseball that I played, won all the time. Like going into this, I was like, I'm winning this. I got all the way to the end, and then I didn't win, and I was just crushed, and I was like, fuck. And then I can't say anything to anyone. Like there's 3 months where it's being edited, they haven't announced the show. Sure. I have to be quiet. I can't say anything. Everyone's like, where have you been? And I was like lying. I was like, I was out on the road with a band, and they were like, how come you weren't posting anything? I was like, I wasn't allowed. And it was just like, I'm like, well, fuck, this is fucking with my head.
Yeah.
And then the show started airing, and I was just like, I don't know what to do. I'm like trying to play drums for different people, and then all of a sudden my phone started ringing for people wanting me to cook for them, and I was like, all right, I should start doing this. And then it got to the point where I was doing it every day, and then I was like, oh, now I'm getting good at it. Like,
yeah,
I'm getting really good. And then I jumped into some restaurants, and I really wanted to understand like the back of house of a restaurant, but I wanted to learn it quickly. So my mind was like, okay, Burger Lounge. Burger Lounge is a fast casual restaurant. So everything's made from scratch, but it's not drive up fast food, but it's quick. You get everyone, they're pumping them out. And so I went to that place, and I was like, I want your worst job. I was like, I want the bottom of the totem pole, and I want to work my way up. And they were like, what?
Yeah.
And I'm like, they're like, why? I was like, I can't tell you.
Sure.
I was like, but I want to start on prep. And they're like, that doesn't make any sense, because I couldn't talk about MasterChef at the time.
Sure. But you had already worked at restaurants before, right?
Yeah, but as front of house.
Okay, sure. So yeah, I get where you're going.
So
okay.
I wanted to learn back of house, but I needed a crash course. And I knew MasterChef was going to be airing in like 3 months. I couldn't talk about it, and I was just like, I need to learn, because I knew something was coming, but I just didn't know. And then in LA, like, I mean, every kitchen is Hispanic. Like there's no like white kids doing prep. Like that just doesn't exist out here. So they were just like, why are you, this doesn't make sense. And I went in, and dude, like it was humbling. So like I got humbled so quick, because Burger Lounge does like 300 burgers in an hour during lunch. Like it's insane. Okay. So I had to prep all the patties, and you got to weigh them all out 5.5 ounces or whatever. And they were like, all right, cool, knock this out and then do this next task. And it took me like 4 hours to portion out all these patties. And they were like, you have to do this. You have to get down to an hour and a half, or we can't keep you here. And I was like, okay. And then so the next day I was just going as fast as I could. And I got down to like 2.5 hours. And then one of the other cooks saw that like I really wanted it. And he came over, and he showed me this little technique of just how to keep moving while you're weighing. And sure enough, it shaved off down to an hour and a half when he showed me what to do. And I was like, oh, that was amazing. And then it was just like, now I could get ahead, and I was prepping the whole place. And then, one day the salad guy didn't show up, and I took his spot. And then from there I was like, can I get the grill? And the like head expo guy was like, no, you're not ready. No, you're not ready. And he kept making me ask. And looking back on it now, like I get what they were doing. They were like really building me up to want it and earn it. And then then they showed me how to do it, and then he showed me how to run expo, and then the show started airing, and someone recognized me through the little window, and I was like, all right guys, my time's done. And they were like, what? I was like, I gotta go. And but I gave myself a crash course with that restaurant, and then I learned just from there, learned how important it is to work with other chefs. And there's a lot of chefs that have egos and don't want to share and don't want to like work with each other like that. They don't want to give away like what they feel like is their secret or their thing. It's like, food.com. I'm going to give them my peanut butter cookie that I sell online. One, because it's difficult to make. So when people start getting into that, they're going to be like, oh, damn, I'll just order one. You know, like I don't want to make this. Yeah. But also at the same time, it's sharing something that someone who maybe is inspired goes, oh, that's a good idea. I'm going to do that. And that's how the world goes around. If we don't share that kind of stuff in the kitchen, then you'll sink on your own if you're not trying to learn and work with new chefs. And I love it. I mean, it's really hard being in the private chef industry because I'm usually cooking all by myself. But like the minute I get an opportunity to hire a chef because we have a big party at the house, I try to hire somebody new because then I learn something and they learn something.
Yeah, well, and I think there's two parts that I want to address to that. One, it's really hard for people to have that kind of humility and just be like, I already am good at this thing that I'm doing, but maybe I don't know everything about it. Putting yourself after being on something like MasterChef, you already did it. You clearly know how to cook, but then to drop down and be at the bottom of the totem pole, a lot of people wouldn't do that. Yeah. Just because their ego wouldn't allow it. They're like, I'm better at this than all of you. I can't be down here. But the thing is like, even if...
Or can't afford. Like
True.
Like going... Like I had to do that job for... I convinced them to give me $17 an hour, which the starting pay for that job was $12. Sure. And I was just very convincing because I couldn't do it for any less, but I needed to do it. So
Sure. But all I'm saying is like I feel like you get to a certain level where now all of a sudden you're never looking down anymore. You're just like on this plateau or however you want to, frame it word wise, but you're looking at all these types of parts, these facets of what you do, and you almost forget about all this bottom stuff. A lot of people don't want to address it because they're like, well, I'm already too far past that to like go back and address it. And I think that happens with business. I think it happens with art. I've seen it a lot. Like I paint a lot, right?
Okay.
And people will be like, man, well, I'm just not good at this thing, so I'm just going to avoid it entirely.
Yeah.
When it's like, but maybe if you went and learned how pastels worked, just even on a basis knowledge, you could use some of that to apply to what you're doing, and you would be even better. Yeah. But a lot of people just can't swallow that pill and be bad at anything,
right?
Because they feel like they're past it.
Yeah, you gotta.
And I also think that the whole gatekeeper mentality is also really short-sighted. So the people who are like, I can't share my secrets. Well, the thing is you're not going to be able to learn very much yourself either then, because nobody else wants to work with you. No one else is going to share their secrets with you. So how are you supposed to improve? Instead, you're sitting there thinking like, I can't let anyone else catch up to me. But instead of looking at the rearview mirror of like, I don't want these people to catch up, why don't you look ahead? Yeah. Like, how do I get better?
Well, and two things. Creativity is NonLinear. And when you learn that, like, if you want to be creative, you gotta think in all different ways. You got to be willing to go back and tap into your roots and then go to places where you're uncomfortable, and then always keep those things that you're really good at and combine them together, and all that kind of builds in it. Not to bring up Macklemore again, but he's got a really great line in one of his songs. The greats aren't great because at birth they could paint. The greats are great because they paint a lot. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's like you got to keep doing it. You got to go to places you're not comfortable with, and that's where you learn and grow. Sure. Get outside that comfort level.
So then you did all this line cook stuff. You built up that knowledge. How did that then translate in you being hired to do personal chef things for people?
Yeah, so I went to another restaurant and convinced them to give me a shot because they were looking for an executive chef. I didn't have the resume, but I was like, I have the creativity. And I was like, just like, if you guys, I was basically just like, if you hold my hand a little bit, I can get to where you need me to be. And they're like, well, we'll give you a try. You got to start at the bottom and work your way up, but we'll run you through every 2 weeks. And so I went to this restaurant and I started, on prep, and then 2 weeks I was on garde manger, and then 2 weeks I was on sauté, and then 2 weeks I was on the grill. And that grill, man, like it was one of those days, and chefs always talk about it, and it's a real thing. It's like it was just a combination of like a really nice day, and we ended up with the most reservations that restaurant had ever had, and I was getting rocked on the grill, and I had tickets like all down my ticket holder, and then they were coming out of the printer just nonstop, piling up on the prep station, and then down to the floor, and I just like could not catch up. And there was a chef that was in helping from another restaurant, and he looks down, he's like, "Are you good?" I was like, "No, I'm fucking dying." I was like, "I'm sinking like the Titanic right now." I was like, "I need help." And he comes over, and he's like, seeing how I'm making one of the dishes, he's like, "That's not how you make this dish." And it's one of his dishes, but he didn't teach it to me. The sous chef taught it to me, and he taught me wrong to sabotage me, because he didn't like me. And I was like, and that happens in this business. And I was like, that's really fucked up, because we're supposed to be a team.
Right.
But you're trying to get ahead, and that they're giving me this course to be your boss. So he was trying to sabotage me. And that really pissed me off. And then they were like, "Why aren't you sandbagging?" And this was a term I didn't know yet. I was, because at the other place, we cooked everything right to order. So, and with Gordon Ramsay, you don't sandbag anything either. So I was like, "What is sandbagging?" And I learned that you can cook all your steaks to like rare, so that you only need like five minutes to finish them at the most, to get it up to like a medium or a medium well if someone wants that, because that takes some time. But you sandbag like 15-20 steaks because you're going to be busy, you're going to sell them. And then I learned that, and it was like boom, next day I never had that happen again.
Right.
So it's like you got to fail to learn in this business, and that's kind of the hard part. That's what a lot of people don't want to do, like you were saying. But so when I was in that restaurant, I didn't like the politics, and then one of the chefs that they ended up bringing in, they found a guy while they were running me around, and he had a friend hit him up, was like, "I got a friend that needs a chef for a private chef gig for like 4 weeks. He's like, I think you should take it." And that was him saying, you can't be here. And I was like, fuck. Sure. So I say yes to this job, and I go take it, and it ends up being with Seth McFarlane.
Whoa.
And I got to cook for him for 4 weeks, and his chef was super dope, and she was so nice and brought me in, and I learned a lot from her. And
was it pretty much just cooking for like his family?
No, it was just him. He lives alone. It was just
oh god.
Yeah, breakfast. Okay. Breakfast. Lunch.
Was it stressful thinking like hopefully he actually is like enjoys this?
Well, yeah. I mean, it is stressful, but you're more just like starstruck. You're like, I'm in this dude's house. He's got 24-hour security. He's such a brilliant dude. He was always reading, or he was always on the phone, but he was so nice. Like if he was on the phone and I set food down in front of him, he pulled the phone away and said thank you. It was like he didn't have to do that, but right. he did, super nice guy, super cool, but just a brain, dude. He's so smart. But anyway, so from there I was like, ooh, I like this. I was like, I get to be creative every day. With a restaurant, you create a menu and you run that menu for however long, and then you replace dishes, but you're constantly making the same thing. Yeah. And then also as a chef in a restaurant, you do more business management than you do actual creating.
Sure.
And so that really, I was like, that part annoys me. So I was like, I need to create. And then in the private world, every meal you get to make something new.
Sure. Plus the time limit's a little different then, right?
Time limit's different. It's more like, because you're not on the clock. So if you're gonna make something difficult, you can come in earlier and spend more time on it.
Right.
And then it's nice, and you're not mentally stressed out. Like, I gotta get this done. It's
yeah.
like and it's so stress free. I think, the private chef world is blowing up right now, because a lot of people are realizing it's better than the fast casual thing, and a lot of people that are busy, it saves them money having the food right there at home ready when they need it.
Sure. Yeah.
And entertaining clients. Like my clients now, they entertain all the time. If they put me on salary, if they had me on, if they hired me for every one of their client dinners, I'd actually make more. But they're smart. They're like, we'll give them a full-time job, and then.
So typically you stay with one person, one client kind of full time.
Yeah, I got some chef buddies that juggle multiple clients, and like I haven't figured that out yet. I don't know how they convince them to drop food off. I tried the drop off thing, and I don't like it because.
So do you do all 3 meals? Do you kind of like come in and out of the house?
It depends what the client wants. The client,
like, how do you have a personal, like, how do you want to have days off with your wife and stuff?
Well, you get days off. You schedule days off. I'm Monday through Friday with this client right now, and then they go out on the weekends.
Oh, okay.
And so with this client, I just do dinner when the family comes into town, like, because they got a big family. When the family comes into town, we do breakfast, lunch, and dinner. But when I was cooking for a basketball player, like, athletes are hard to cook for because they're constantly working out, so they constantly need to be eating. And
like, diet's more strict, I imagine, too.
Well, actually, it's not. It's just keep the sugar down, and you got to be smart with your sugars. Like the fruit, you want to get fruit into them in the morning because they need that to help burn their caloric intake properly. But when they get the biggest thing is with the athletes is just getting them the amount of calories and doing it pretty healthy. Like, you're not just giving them Big Macs. Sometimes that's what they want. They just want cheeseburgers because 4,400 calories a day was what I was giving this last NBA player, and it was just like breakfast, lunch, and dinner, snacks, shakes, and I was logging it all, like keeping track of every ounce of fat, every gram of fat.
Sure.
Sugar, all of it, and I'd give it to him at the end of the night, and that was cool. It was a very time consuming, but yeah, I mean, they're burning so much. Like, LeBron James eats like 2 pizzas after a game. It's like,
sure. Yeah.
But when you're running up and down a court like that, man, like, especially at that size is also why, because they're so big.
Sure.
They're burning it.
Sure. So why'd you even want to do the cookie thing then if you're already like kind of set?
That's a good question too. After being on MasterChef, I was getting, calls to come do dinners, and some people, it's not cheap. Right. So there's some people that can't afford it, and I get that. So I wanted to create something that, everyone could get a piece of me, just share myself to the world. But I didn't want it to just, like, a lot of chefs are like, I'll do seasonings or I'll do a hot sauce. And it's like, seasonings are just a combinations of seasonings that are already in the grocery store. Like,
sure.
It's, unless you're like, and even like Larry's or Old Bay, turn those around. It's just a blend of things that are already there. You can make it on your own. So that one, I was just like, I'm not going that route. That's not my brand. Seasonings or hot sauce is not my brand. I want to do a hot sauce one day because I love hot sauce, but it's like, if you looked at the grocery store,
there's unlimited.
It's insane. And then there's places out in the middle of the country when you're driving through, and it's just like 1 million different hot sauces, and you're like,
yeah,
I'm not gonna go play in this world. And it took a long time. I wish I had something to sell right out the gate last time, so I'm excited that I have this ready now that I'm back on TV. But I was cooking. I was at my clients, and they have a big office, and they were like, can you make some cookies for Valentine's Day for the office? I'll package them up. And I was like, cool. So I made like 100 cookies, and we put them in little packages, and I posted it on Instagram. And I got a flood of messages. Are you selling cookies? Are you selling cookies? I was like, no, but maybe I should be, right? And so that's kind of where it sparked, and I was like, I could make a punk rock cookie. I was like, that's my brand. That's dope.
Yeah.
Like, I do fine dining food, I do private dining food, and then I got this punk rock cookie, and that's just like, I feel like it's badass.
Well, yeah, and you had all this fan base from people who watched MasterChef who are like, man, I wish I could eat his food, but can't afford it. So now all of a sudden there's a price point option.
Yeah, exactly. And I had, it's wild too, is I was trying, because the whole time I was trying to figure out something that fit, and I wanted to do sous vide ready foods. I don't know if you're familiar with sous vide. So sous vide is like when you cook something in a water bath, and it's in like a plastic bag, so it doesn't touch the water, and whatever's in that plastic bag, you cook at a certain temperature. So for instance, a steak, you put a steak in this plastic bag, put some butter, some garlic, shallots, thyme, salt, pepper, put it all in the bag, you seal it, and then you put it in a water bath, 129 degrees for an hour. You pull it out, you sear it, you have a perfect steak. so I was like, oh, I could launch like a steak and like fish brand where everyone could have my steak.
Sure.
They gotta just order it and sous vide it. And then popping up in Whole Foods, like probably like 6 months later, I started seeing like chicken that was in a bag sous vide, and it was just like reheat, and I was like, fuck, they beat me to it. But it's like the minute you say an idea out loud, like I swear we're all connected that kind of way. Like it hits people's brains at the same time. Like, and I think we're all connected, and like as soon as you think of something, you better get going, or someone else is gonna do it.
Yeah. Well, and there's so many other people that are doing something similar. The industry of number of people who cook food, right? Astronomically high number.
Everyone
wants to do something, so they're gonna have ideas. But no. So I mean, you get done with doing like the celebrity chef thing on TV. It blows my mind that I feel like it would be really, really difficult to just suck it up and be like, I guess I'll just go learn how to make patties. Like
Well, it's a lot of this too. So the phone starts ringing, people want you to cook, and I mean, I remember the first pop-up I did, I looked back and I was like, man, I can't believe I served that food. And it's just because like I wasn't there yet, but because I was on TV doing it, everyone believes I'm there.
They assumed you were.
Yeah. So then I had it was like playing catch up. It was like I'm trying to cram in 10 years worth of knowledge in like 6 months because I need to be able to be good for these people, and so it was that. I mean, it was just like the anxiety. I couldn't sleep. I would just up all night just reading how to do certain techniques, how to do this and that, and just so that I could, put something forward for the people that were wanting to book me. And then after doing it for long enough, now I'm like, I've put in almost 10,000 hours, I think, and I feel like really good where I'm at. So now I'm so excited to learn new stuff because it immediately just opens up like a new idea. But I mean, there's imposter syndrome and it's real, and I definitely went through it. There was just moments where I was just like, I shouldn't be doing this because there's so many people that are better. But then I also learned at the same time, as soon as I surround myself with those better people, then I become better. So then it was just like, I staged with a couple of like Michelin star chefs, and I jumped on some catering gigs with other people, and then I've even done like, there was a hurricane that hit my hometown, and I was watching it from the news here, and I just felt helpless, and it was Hurricane Maria, and as soon as it passed, I was like looking to see if I could fly in to some close airport, and there was one flight left from Virgin going to Miami, and there was one seat left, and it was $990.
Jeez.
And so I called Virgin, and I was like, hey, this is who I am. I was like, this is what I want to do. I was like, I need to fly in and help. This is my hometown. I was like, I just need to go help. I was like, is there any way you can give me a break on this ticket? And shout out Virgin, they gave me the ticket for $99.
Sick.
And I flew into my Fort Lauderdale or Miami, and my brother picked me up, and we drove across the coast to where the hurricane hit. And long story short, I joined this chef mission called Mercy Chefs, and they chase basically natural disasters and big events, similar to what Jose Andres is doing, but they do it from a faith-based perspective. And I don't believe in any sort of organized religion, but that doesn't matter when people need help, right?
Yeah. Well, it's common goal. Right?
Yeah, exactly. So I jumped on with these guys and learned how to do 9,000 meals a day, and like it's insane. I mean, like we had a semi truck that was a refrigerator and a semi truck that was a kitchen, and it was just nonstop. It was wild. I mean, I have photos of me like mixing 50 gallons of mashed potatoes in a tilt skillet with an oar, basically from like a paddle boat. Yeah. And it's so hot and humid, and I'm only like $1.45, $1.50, and I'm trying to mix these mashed potatoes, and they're so thick and heavy that I'm sliding on the floor. And this big dude down at the end of the kitchen is just laughing because he normally does it, and he's this big 350-pound black dude, and he's just laughing at me, and I'm just like, I'm laughing too. I'm like, get over here and help me. And so then he puts his arms around. It's fucking hilarious. But it was an experience. It was a learning experience. But all that stuff applies. It's like I know how to get out in the field and make a meal happen for a lot of people, and then I can also go in and do, you know, something that's super small and sophisticated for a fine dining dinner. So
yeah, well, everyone has to be their own personal brand. Everyone has to fill a lot of roles. When you're an entrepreneur, and I think being a private chef, personal chef is an entrepreneur. Obviously, the cookie brand's an entrepreneur. If you can't wear all the hats, then you're going to be spending a lot of money, and probably pretty much everything you make, you're going to be paying out to other people because you know what I mean? So you have to learn how to do a lot of that stuff. Can you talk to me more though? Like you mentioned that you're getting back on TV, so it's kind of perfect timing with the cookie. What's going on?
Yeah, so I'm back on TV with MasterChef. It's an all-star season called Back to Win, and it's basically a lot of the fan favorites that, you know, were on MasterChef over the last 11 years that are back for a second chance. So
cool. I'm
on right now, and it's going pretty wild. We just aired the first team challenge last night, and yeah, it was intense. So it's exciting.
Is it all done and you just can't talk about the results then?
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
So it airs on Fox on Wednesday nights, 8/7 Central, and so yeah, tune in and watch. It's also on Hulu the next day and catch up, and it's been it's my season to win for sure, so I'm back and excited.
So yeah, last time you saw this window where you're like, I have all this national attention from the show and I can't take advantage of it with a product. So this time you're coming in hot.
And it's kind of funny. So I got the cookie ready. I was doing the cookie before they called me, and I was getting ready to launch. I was a week out from launching, and they called me, and I was like, "Oh shit!" I was like, "Now this is real."
Yeah.
I was like, "Now I really got to get this going." But I was excited to be launched and get my systems down before it gets busy. You know, now we're pumping out hundreds of cookies a week just at different markets and doing that kind of stuff. And we're about to do a residency at Runway Playa Vista and hopefully work that into a store by the holidays. The holidays in the cookie business are insane.
I imagine.
I couldn't believe it. It was wild.
How do you produce them? You can't be personally cooking.
A lot of them I am, yeah. So commissary kitchen, middle of the night. Like LA has kitchens that are open all the time.
Oh, okay.
And then I have a baker too that when I personally can't, I have someone that comes in. She's awesome. Her name's Erica, and she's really great. And I make the recipes, and she's really good at following them and producing it, and we get along good. And what else was I say? Yeah, I mean, back to your topic of wearing all the hats. Definitely after wearing all the hats, when you start delegating and you're focusing on, like, I focus a lot on the creating, and now that I do have a baker, and then my wife does a lot of the managing of the Shopify and the inventory and stuff. I mean, when I started out, I was doing all of it, and then I showed her how to do the Shopify, and so she started taking over the Shopify. Now I don't remember how to do the Shopify. You know what I mean? It's like So when you see that show, like Undercover Bosses, it's like now I get it, because I've been in both sides now. I've been on the side where the CEO comes in. I'm like, this guy has no idea how this place runs. Now I know why, because he's doing so much else to keep it running that he's not worried about how the computer works. He's got people for that. And so I think a lot of entrepreneurship, you got to get out and just put your feet in different shoes, and you learn a lot of perspective. And I think that's all really we have to do to, back to like what my shirt says, no more war. It's like we just need to look at things differently, have a different perspective, take a step outside of you and your ego, and look inward, just try to look at it a different way.
Yeah, and I think I think it's hard to be successful with a business if you don't have a general understanding of all the aspects. I think starting from the bottom, just like you did going back and learning how to make patties the way they did or whatever. I think starting back and having all that initial knowledge base, for one, it helps you gain respect with other people, and especially if you're trying to hire somebody to delegate. If you can't teach them what you want in the first place, then they're not going to respect you, and that's its own conversation. But to try to scale something, there's just only so far you can do totally on your own.
Yeah, I mean,
and at some point you're hitting a ceiling, right? And then you're like, well, but I do want to do more. So how do I do that?
Yeah.
At some point you just you just can't do.
I mean, you look
all
at
of it.
Elon Musk. He's one of the smartest dudes on our planet, and he's just like, the hardest thing I've ever had to deal with is scaling up Tesla. And it's like, you know, they're back ordered for months, and they're making the most profit of any company, and he's still like, I'm having trouble scaling this thing. It's like,
Yeah, I blew it selling my stock way too early on it. I made $1,000 in a month, and I sold it because I was like, oh, it just popped up 50% in a brief amount of time, and then it went, because I bought it at like 200, jumped to 300, sold, and then it went to 900, and I was like, dude. So yeah, I blew it. I should have believed in Elon. We all need to believe in Elon. Anyways,
well, I've hung on to it. I still got a bunch.
Oh, so. I'm jealous. Well, good for you. So. Anyways,
I did that with Dogecoin. I had Doge at 0.0008, and I bought, I don't know, like 600 shares at that.
Yeah.
And it was like, we were doing the math. We're like, if this gets to $1, we're gonna have $11 million. It was just like, we were free. And then it went to 1 penny, and I was like, holy shit! Like, you know, $3,000.
Yeah.
Done. I pulled it out, and then it took off, and I was like, fuck. And then I was just chasing it.
Yeah. Well, again, that's another rabbit hole we could go down.
Right.
But when you do things that you're passionate about, I always ask this question on the show, because the whole point of the show is to inspire other people to do things that they're really passionate about. It's a harder journey usually. You make less money usually, especially at the beginning, but you get to have really memorable experiences that just mean something to you, right? So what's a story of a memorable experience for you that only happened because you chose this path?
Wow. I have a lot, so let me let me try and pick one. I mean, one for me that was really special that I did not expect was, I got a call from the U.S. consulate in Guadalajara, Mexico, and they're like, we want to fly you down and do an event. And I'm like, in Mexico? Like the girl that beat me on MasterChef is Hispanic, like, and they're calling me. Like, I'm like, but you don't want the winner?
Yeah.
And it was like, no, they wanted me, and they flew me down, and I got picked up in a, you know, bulletproof SUV and handed a government phone. They're like, don't use your phone, use this phone. And I had a whole itinerary that had the golden eagle seal on it, and I was like, wow. I was like, this is wild. I was like, what? Why me? You know?
Yeah.
And then just the messages of inspiration where people just message me and they're like, I'm so inspired by what you do, and you know, you've given me the hope or the encouragement to go pursue their passion. And it's like, that is just a cool, just like, result that you don't plan for, and it gives you just all the motivation to keep going. I think, you know, back in like when I was playing music and we got music on the Kardashians in the real world, it was like, our music is airing all over the world, and like, we still get royalties from it. It's crazy. I mean, they're not a lot, but the fact that, like, that check comes in and it says Kardashians, Spain, Germany, and then you're just like, what? Like, my music just played over there. Like, It's wild to think about. Going to another city and selling out a venue as a chef. Like, I'm like, I just took my experience of being a musician and sold out a dinner in Vancouver. Like, wow. Like, it's just like, it's just the culmination of all the hard work. When you get to that point where you hit like that peak where it all comes together is really cool.
It's incredibly satisfying and fulfilling. I've had people message me from all over the world too, where they're like, I had some dude recently messaging me from Canada saying, he's like, God, I can't wait till your show really blows up. This is so awesome. I was just listening to this episode, that episode, whatever. And I'm like, how do you, for one, like, what part of Canada are you in? And two, like, why? Like, why are you listening to my show in particular? But then again, dude, I live in a fairly small town of Wisconsin, yet I'm out here interviewing people from MasterChef, I guess.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the journey gets a little bit wild.
Well, being from Wisconsin, I got to hook you up with my friend Katrina. She was on MasterChef season 6 with me, but she lives in Wisconsin, and she makes mustard as like her side hustle.
Oh, dope.
and she's a really cool, genuine person.
I'm gonna hit you up about Florida too, because I actually spent a lot of time in Florida.
Oh yeah, where?
Well, my dad just bought a place by not Cape Coral. Where is it?
Oh,
now I can't think of
Fort Myers, Naples.
Kind of. I'll remember off
Okay.
mic later on. But he just bought a place down there. But I own a skateboard shop, right? That's like my main income source. I closed that for January and February because we're covered in snow and no one buys anything. So I go south. I'm like, I don't need to be here, because everyone tells me like, why would you live in Wisconsin? It's so cold. And I'm like, dude, January and February I go to the beach in Florida and I take off from work, but I can afford to do that because it's Eau Claire, Wisconsin, where my 4-bedroom house cost me less than $200,000.
Wow.
Dude, it's on half an acre. I got a screened-in porch with a hot tub. It's totally different lifestyle out there. Anyways, back to the show. I always ask this question too. I think you learn fastest from mistakes. And I think you learn really fast when you put yourself in a situation where you're not ready for an opportunity yet, but you're going to make yourself ready, which is kind of what happened with you.
Yeah.
But what's a story of a mistake you made that taught you something valuable that someone listening might be able to benefit from?
I don't know. There was one time where I thought I left a chef's kitchen to their standard and it wasn't, and they read me the riot act and then like never talked to me again. And then later on I hired a chef to cover for me, and I came back and my refrigerator was a fucking disaster, and I will never hire that dude again because I couldn't believe it. I mean, I've never done anything as bad as he left my refrigerator. I know that the way I left this person's kitchen, it wasn't bad. It was actually a communication error. The housekeeper said she was going to take care of it, and she didn't. And so it was one of those things. But it was not what this dude did to my kitchen. But it was a good moment of perspective where I went, oh, I should definitely... It was just like a full circle moment. It was like, I messed up one time this way, and now this chef messed up. It's just like... I don't know if there was anything that really answers that question, but it was one of those moments where I learned I messed up, and I was like, perspective, right? I had a new perspective of who I was and what I leave behind. I mean, other than that, like, it's just like things to learn from. It's like when those tickets were hitting the floor. Oh, I learned you can sandbag. I don't know. Yeah. I guess I'm so used to failing that, because like you don't learn unless you've messed up. And there's been a lot of times like I nail it on the first try, nail it on the second try. I'm like, dope. And then like the third time I mess up and I'm like, what happened? Like on a cake or something, or on a pie. It's like, why did that not work? I did it the same way. And then you go back through and you're like, no, you didn't. And then you're like, okay, now I have a new tool. Don't ever do that.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that's the best way to avoid big mistakes later on. It's better to make them early.
Yeah.
So that way they don't happen when, say you already know how to make this thing, Now you're in this situation with this client where you really can't screw up, but you don't know how to problem solve because none of these problems have happened yet.
Yeah.
Right? So.
Well, like on MasterChef season 6, we got done and no one hands you like a rule book or a itinerary or, a manual and says, here, this is what you do now. Like, you're left to figure it out. And I've always lived by like the saying, when opportunity presents itself, there's no more time to prepare. And so what that means is just, try to, whatever you're doing, just be prepared. And that was one thing. Like, I was not prepared when that show ended. I had no idea what I was doing.
Yeah.
And now I do. Now I'm excited to be back because, I got this. I started my own podcast, A Bunch of Losers with Derrick Fox.
I saw that.
I interview...
very curious about that one.
Yeah, so I interview people that have been on reality competition shows and did not win, because I know what that's like. I know how hard it was, but I know how much it also changed my life. So I want to get those stories out there. And there's a lot of them. And so the problem is now I'm back on a TV show trying to win again. So if I win, I'll just have to start a second podcast, A Bunch of Winners. Which there's way less winners than there are losers. There's a lot of people that lose in these competition shows. So
my show is on the radio twice a week. One dedicated to Midwest people, one for my regular show. So you could just do 2 shows.
Yeah.
Just be on the radio twice a week like me.
I mean, I this isn't going to be the last podcast. I enjoy it a lot, and I enjoy talking with people, and I have, we could talk here for hours. I have so many stories. I've accomplished so much in such a short time of my life, and been through so many different ups and downs that, like, I'm just happy to be able to share a little bit, and people get excited and inspired. And I mean, that's the thing about the cookie. It's in my mission statement in the cookie, is that I hope that this product inspires somebody to chase their own dream.
That's a pretty beautiful message for a cookie. Well, thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, for sure.
Where can people go get in contact with you? Where can they find the podcast? And then where can they buy these cookies?
Yeah, so the cookies you can buy at epicmegacookie.com. The Instagram is Epic Mega Cookie Co. EMC squared. Shout out Santino. He threw that one at me. Chef Derrick Fox is my Instagram and Facebook. I mean, sometimes I'm on Twitter. It's DRockVP, but that one's just like the wild, wild west. Sometimes I'm political. Sometimes I live tweet MasterChef. Sometimes I just scroll. So
sure.
Don't waste your time with my Twitter. It's not worth it. But yeah, Chef Derrick Fox is my Instagram. I reply to all the good messages.
All the real ones that aren't bots.
Yeah. And then A Bunch of Losers with Derrick Fox is on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. So it's out there.
So go listen to it. Write a review, because not that many people do. And while you're at it, you can write a review for my show. You can find my show everywhere. It's just Passion Pod. On Instagram, it's just Passion Pod. It's pretty easy to find the little skull and mic. You can donate to the show at passionpod.org. You can buy merch if you want to wear t-shirts or jackets or whatever. I don't know. I mean, I think the merch looks cool regardless if you like the show.
We both got lightning bolts in our logos.
And neither of us made our logos. Right? Somebody else. We hired a graphic designer and then had input, and they just knew we needed lightning bolts.
Well, I told them I wanted lightning bolts because I have them tattooed on me.
Oh, see, mine was more coincidental. The guy just was like, the show's about sparking somebody to pursue their passion. I was like, dude, genius.
Genius.
And so, yeah, I have one, but I can't take credit for that. That was Zach Pater. He's a homie and a graphic designer back in Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of The Passion Pod. We hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. We'll see you soon.